Chapter 1 Rebirth. As I regained consciousness, soft, melodious music played in the background. I opened my eyes and felt disoriented for a moment, only to realize that the scene before me was strangely familiar. I had been reborn on the very day of my engagement to Richard. In front of me was a jewelry box, and my mother's voice rang in my ears. "This is Richard's engagement gift to you. Put it on, and you'll officially be his fiancé." I didn't need to open it to know what it contained. A diamond ring, 1 carat, a common style. It had been bought by Richard's secretary without him even looking at it. I cast a cynical glance around the table. Richard was focused on picking food, while the others looked at me with satisfaction. I felt like a gift box packaged, priced, and handed over. No one bothered to ask if the gift box was willing, and no one cared if it had its own thoughts. But in this new life, I no longer wanted to be a tool for the White family. I had the same rights as my brother. Why should my entire life be planned for me just because I was a girl? I stood up. I refused to marry Richard. My mother's smile froze for a moment, her tone turning cold. "Joanna, sit down." The others continued chatting, dismissing my words. My mother even pulled me down. "Sit down and behave." I shook off her hand and repeated, louder this time, "I refuse to marry Richard." Slap. A sharp slap landed on my face, and my mother scolded me. "Joanna, you've become bold. How dare you defy me? Richard is a blessing for you. What right do you have to be picky? I'm telling you, whether you want to or not, you'll marry him." I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, but I didn't feel the pain. I stared fiercely at my mother. She had always used family ties to control me, forcing me to live the life she had planned. But did she truly care about me? Her love had always been reserved for her son, Ryan White. With a trembling voice but unwavering resolve, I shot back. "If you like Richard so much, why don't you divorce Dad and marry him instead?" My mother was stunned. "Joanna, have you lost your mind? What nonsense are you talking?" My father, his face stern and exuding authority, snapped, "Apologize." Ha! I let out a cold laugh and with a burst of strength, I flipped the table over. "Joanna! You little brat, you!" The room descended into chaos. My father, his face dark with rage, tried to strike me, while Richard's father tried to calm him down. I watched the scene with a cold smile, ready to leave at any moment. The argument attracted the hotel manager, and along with him came one of the hotel's shareholders, Lucas Summer. I turned to look, and as soon as I saw that young, handsome face again, I couldn't control my emotions. I ran toward him, throwing myself into his arms. In my past life, I had embraced him countless times, but never had it felt as real as it did now. "Joanna! Joanna!" Lucas was equally stunned. We hadn't been this close since we drifted apart, and he didn't know how to react. I nestled into his chest and looked up at him. "Lucas Summer, can you take me away?" Chapter 2 The Past. Lucas and I grew up in the same neighborhood. We were childhood companions, always together. When we were in kindergarten, he was like my guardian, always watching over me. We were childhood sweethearts, and feelings naturally blossomed between us. But my parents didn't see it that way. My mother forbade me from getting close to Lucas. "That boy's background is too poor for you." Whenever she saw me with him, she would hit me. Over time, my back became a canvas of scars. When that didn't work, she resorted to threats. "If you get close to him again, the White family will destroy the Summers. Your parents have the power to make him disappear from this world. Understand?" I became scared and decided to distance myself from Lucas. I avoided him, picked subjects he didn't like, and had a nanny pick me up every day to avoid walking with him. One day, he blocked my way at the classroom door. "Joanna, what did I do wrong? Why are you ignoring me?" I looked at him quietly. "You didn't do anything wrong." After high school, I was sent to an all-girls college while Lucas went to Oxford. He went abroad to study, while I remained trapped in the White family's expectations, waiting for the day I would fulfill my purpose after graduation. Even though we were far apart, I couldn't help but think about him. After graduation, Lucas returned to China to start his own business, reportedly very busy. Meanwhile, I followed my parents' plans and got engaged to Richard, a wealthy heir. Thanks to me, the White family gained many resources and prospered. My parents were proud of me, saying I was a good daughter. By the time my brother took over the family business, the White family was well established in the capital, but no one ever asked if I was truly happy. After marriage, Richard indulged in a hedonistic lifestyle, dating young models, and even brought women home during my postpartum period. He infected me with diseases, cut off all my social ties, and forced me to be a servant in his home. He constantly belittled and tortured me, eventually driving me into severe depression. I reached out to my parents and brother for help, but they told me I was now part of the Smith family and that I had nothing to do with the White family. They said I was being too dramatic, living a life of luxury yet still complaining. My mother even warned me to stay out of Richard's way, threatening that if I caused any issues that affected the family's business, she would make my life miserable. One evening I stood on the rooftop, my hair disheveled, my clothes torn, crying in despair. That was when I jumped. I lost my life, but my soul didn't dissipate. It lingered beside my body, watching as passersby screamed, called the police, and dialed 911. The first person to arrive wasn't Richard, nor my family. It was Lucas Summer. My body was mangled beyond recognition. He was almost cold as he handled my remains and notified my family. As my body was placed in a body bag, he suddenly pushed the staff aside and touched my broken face. A tear fell into my eye. He whispered, "I'm sorry I was late. I thought it was the end." But then came the years of his relentless pursuit. Lucas expanded his empire aggressively, and under his crushing pressure, both the White and Smith families went bankrupt, while the Summer family rose to dominance. He didn't stop there. He sent his men to collect debts, forcing my family and Richard to the brink of ruin. In the end, they were arrested. Once everything was settled, Lucas seemed to release all his burdens. His age suddenly advanced by years. He never married, leaving all his wealth to my daughter. One morning, his life force and my soul disappeared together beside my grave. Now I had a chance to stand before him again. This time I asked him to take me away. Chapter 3, I Want You. Hearing my request, his eyes instantly softened, and a brilliant light sparkled in them as he nodded solemnly. Let's go. I left behind the chaos in the private room, following Lucas out amid my parents' scolding. Some parents are born to collect debts. In my past life, I repaid their debts. In this life, I would escape the cage. Even if I were covered by storms, I wouldn't regret it. I followed him to his car. He started the engine but didn't drive away. Instead, he teasingly smiled at me. The obedient girl has learned to defy her elders? I turned to look at him. The warmth in my palm was tangible, and his lively presence filled the air. The thought of him fighting against the White and Smith families for me, growing old alone, made my eyes well up. Lucas, confused, asked, "What's wrong?" I bit my lip. "I have nowhere to go now. Can you take me in?" His Adam's apple bobbed, and his gaze darkened a fraction. "Joanna, do you understand what you're asking?" I nodded seriously. "Please take me in." In my past life, he had guarded my grave for decades. Now, in this life, I had no regrets in making this decision. This man was worth it. His grip tightened subconsciously, and his warmth grew even more intense. He said, "Let's go home." I followed Lucas to his place. He had long since moved out from the Summer family home and now lived on his own. Over the years, he had made a name for himself in the capital. His apartment was a 3-bedroom, 2-living-room unit. Lucas told me to pick any room I wanted, and that daily necessities would be delivered soon. As I looked around his room, something on the storage shelf caught my attention. A Barbie doll, cute and delicate, yet out of place in his otherwise minimalist space. It was a gift I had given him when I was 5 years old. In return, he had given me a wooden horse figurine. But my mother had smashed the wooden horse as soon as I brought it home. "What is this garbage? Don't you know it could be contaminated? If you bring anything else home, I'll throw you out along with it." After that, I stopped accepting gifts from anyone. Lucas's wooden horse, however, remained forever in my heart. His voice interrupted my thoughts. "Joanna, I've been quietly watching you. Although your life seems glamorous on the outside, your smile has always been stiff, and there's never any light in your eyes. I've always felt you weren't happy. If I was just imagining things before, today's events have confirmed it. You're not living well in the White family." His emotions were hidden deep in his eyes, but his voice was soft and comforting, as if offering advice to a friend. You did well today. Taking the first step makes it easier to break free from the White family's control. Whatever you decide, I will support you. I turned and looked up at him softly, saying, "Thank you." Only then did I realize how close we were. If I raised my head even slightly, I could kiss him. I was tempted. My soul had been with him for decades, unable to touch him. Now, with just a slight move, I could feel his lips against mine. But before I could act, Lucas pulled back, looking slightly awkward. "I have some things to take care of at the office. You should rest." His ears were faintly flushed. Chapter 4. Taking back what's mine. Lucas went to work and I stayed at his place. Running away from an engagement was no simple matter. After over 20 years of control and planning, my ties with the White family were deeply intertwined. Breaking free was not going to be easy. Sure enough, on the third day, my mother called, her shrill voice cutting through the air. "Joanna, how long are you going to keep fooling around? Come home." I held the phone away from my ear and calmly asked, "Has the engagement with the Smith family been canceled?" She exploded like a firecracker, shouting, "Cancel what? You ungrateful daughter. Running off with another man on your engagement day. How can you be so shameless? Richard doesn't mind your past, and he's still willing to marry you. You should be thanking the heavens. Come back and apologize to the Smith family." Though I had expected this outcome, I still felt a pang of sadness. I refused to marry Richard. I want to marry Lucas Summer. My mother froze for a moment, then flew into a rage. "Have you lost your mind? That boy from the Summer family? His family can't help us in business at all." I sighed. "Mom, is that all I am to you? Just a tool for financial gain?" She paused as if embarrassed before snapping, "What nonsense are you talking? Did that Summer boy put you up to this? Just wait. I'll come find you. You'd better come back and reflect on your actions." I let out a cold laugh and hung up the phone. They would find me eventually. Hiding was not a permanent solution. Besides, in this new life, I would not let the White and Smith families continue to prosper. As the eldest daughter of the White family, I had a stake in the family business. In this life, I would take back what was rightfully mine. Chapter 5. Cooperation. That evening, when Lucas returned, he found that I had prepared dinner and even opened a bottle of wine. I greeted him with a smile that lit up my face. "You're back. Dinner's ready." He looked at me surprised, then sat down to taste the food. "It's good. Cheers." I raised my glass and we clinked glasses. The warmth of the wine spread through me, filling the room with a comfortable heat. I removed my jacket, revealing a silk slip dress underneath. Lucas couldn't hide his amazement as his gaze swept over me. Thinking of my past life's despair and his lonely existence, I summoned all my courage, took a sip of wine and leaned toward him. He froze. His pupils dilated in shock as I pressed my lips against his. It felt as though we were both drunk, lost in the passion of the moment. His fingers brushed my shoulder, sending a jolt of electricity through me. But just as things were about to intensify, Lucas suddenly stopped. His voice, hoarse, broke the silence. "Joanna, do you know what you're doing?" I nodded, my heart racing. "Of course, Lucas Summer. I want you." His face flushed, and despite the obvious desire in his eyes, he trembled as he helped me put my jacket back on. His gaze shifted, avoiding mine. "Whatever you want, I will give you. But I can't cross that line with you." "Why?" "Because I like you." His eyes met mine, serious and unwavering. "I care about you, not just for physical pleasure. Joanna, because I like you, I respect you. I'll wait until you give me your heart completely. If you don't, I'd rather be your friend for life. This fool, my heart has belonged to you for so long." I knew that no matter what I said now, he wouldn't believe me. But that didn't matter. We had all the time in the world. I needed his help, his cooperation. And so I told him my plan. Lucas listened in stunned silence, his eyes filled with disbelief, but I could see a flicker of self-mockery deep in his gaze. I was confused for a moment, but then it hit me. He thought I was using his feelings. I couldn't help but chuckle, though I didn't try to explain. I simply nodded seriously and said, "When I get what I want, you will get your fair share. Every last bit." Chapter 6. Exposure. After that night, I returned to the White family. Naturally, I was met with harsh punishment and scolding. After kneeling for 2 hours, I finally received their forgiveness. My mother then instructed me to visit the Smith family the next day to apologize in person. That evening, I cooked dinner as a gesture of contrition. As I was bringing the dishes to the table, Ryan White returned home. When he saw me, he only sneered. "Weren't you running away from the wedding? Why are you back?" I smiled ingratiatingly. "Brother, you're back. Wash your hands and let's eat." Ryan glared at me. "Call me Mr. White. Do you think you're worthy of being my sister? Joanna, know your place. Even if you carry the White name, you're nothing but a servant born to serve me. Don't delude yourself into thinking you're a real White family daughter." I smiled humbly. "You're right." In the following days, I did as they asked. I visited the Smith family to apologize, worked diligently at home, and took on all the chores without complaint. My parents kept up the appearance of a happy family, occasionally ordering me around and reminding me how to behave as a good wife after marriage. But Ryan, spoiled since childhood, was arrogant and often resorted to either beating or scolding me. I continued to flatter him, acting more humble than a maid, bowing my head and submitting to him. After a week, I had gathered enough material. The living room had cameras installed, and late that night I messaged Lucas. 10 minutes later, his hacker had infiltrated our surveillance system and copied all the footage. The next day it went viral. A video titled "The Real Life of a Wealthy Heiress" topped the trending list, showing clips from the surveillance footage in our living room. In the video, I brought Ryan a bowl of soup, only for him to knock it over. I immediately knelt down to clean the spill, while he laughed mockingly. There were also clips of me being punished, with my mother sitting on the sofa, holding a feather duster, lecturing me about the proper conduct of a wife. And more footage of me ironing clothes, sweeping the floor, wiping the tables, washing vegetables, and doing the dishes. Soon after, news broke that I was being forced into an engagement with Richard. Alongside this, scandalous reports emerged about his lavish spending in nightclubs and his escapades with dancers in hotels. The online discussions were relentless, and the topic gained more and more traction. Heiress? More like a servant. Can't believe this pampered princess is treated worse than a maid at home. The White family is heartless. How could Mrs. White be so cruel to her own daughter? And forcing her to marry Richard? Is he even worth marrying? The White family is inhumane. Poor Joanna. Chapter 7: A Plan. Amid the intense public pressure, the White family's stock value plummeted, and deals they were negotiating were abruptly canceled. My father was so anxious that cold sores appeared at the corners of his mouth, and my mother took her frustration out on me. "You little brat. Did you leak this? I knew you couldn't be trusted." I looked at her with a pitiful expression. "I didn't. Mom, only you and Dad have access to the surveillance footage. I can't get to it." She paused, and I quickly added, "Besides, I'm your daughter. Why would I do something to damage our family's reputation? I regret running away from the engagement already. I would never do something so foolish again." She was half convinced, muttering, "Could the surveillance footage have been hacked?" Just then Ryan came home. He cursed at me and then checked the surveillance footage. It didn't take long for him to confirm that the system had indeed been compromised. My mother turned off the cameras and shoved me roughly. "Go online and clarify that you did all those things willingly. We didn't force you into any of this." I moved slowly. "Mom, will clarifying even help? Without hard proof, everyone will just assume you forced me into it." She panicked, pacing frantically. Ryan suggested a few ideas, but they were laughable. Seeing their panic, I spoke calmly. "Actually, I have an idea. Spit it out. The key issue right now is that I'm being treated like a servant and being forced to marry Richard. If we change the narrative to show that I did everything willingly and actually want to marry Richard, it might help." "That's obvious. Of course, you know whether it's voluntary." My mother shot me a glare. "Yes, the White family knew it wasn't voluntary, but did they care?" I smiled bitterly and continued, "If I had enough power and resources, then whatever I did would be seen as voluntary, because logically, I wouldn't need to follow anyone's orders." My mother furrowed her brow. "What are you getting at?" I said matter-of-factly. "If you and Dad sign an agreement giving me 5% of White Corporation shares, Then when people see the footage, what will they think? Ryan immediately jumped up, shouting, "Dream on. White corporation is mine. It has nothing to do with you." My mother thought for a moment and finally grasped the idea. They'll think it's all fake, or that you're just doing this for attention. But then she narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Joanna, are you trying to take Ryan's inheritance?" I replied, composed, "Of course not. Just add a clause that the agreement becomes void once I get married." She mulled over it, still unsure. I pushed further. "If the public outcry continues, the Smith family might cancel the engagement." In reality, the Smith family wouldn't cancel the engagement. Richard's reputation was already tarnished, and no reputable family would want their daughter to marry him. Amid the intense public pressure, the White family's stock value plummeted, and deals they were negotiating were abruptly canceled. My father was so anxious that cold sores appeared at the corners of his mouth, and my mother took her frustration out on me. "You little brat. Did you leak this? I knew you couldn't be trusted." I looked at her with a pitiful expression. "I didn't. Mom, only you and Dad have access to the surveillance footage. I can't get to it." She paused and I quickly added, "Besides, I'm your daughter. Why would I do something to damage our family's reputation? I regret running away from the engagement already. I would never do something so foolish again." She was half convinced, muttering, "Could the surveillance footage have been hacked?" Just then Ryan came home. He cursed at me and then checked the surveillance footage. It didn't take long for him to confirm that the system had indeed been compromised. My mother turned off the cameras and shoved me roughly. "Go online and clarify that you did all those things willingly. We didn't force you into any of this." I moved slowly. "Mom, will clarifying even help? Without hard proof, everyone will just assume you forced me into it." She panicked, pacing frantically. Ryan suggested a few ideas, but they were laughable. Seeing their panic, I spoke calmly. "Actually, I have an idea." "Spit it out." "The key issue right now is that I'm being treated like a servant and being forced to marry Richard. If we change the narrative to show that I did everything willingly and actually want to marry Richard, it might help." "That's obvious. Of course, you know whether it's voluntary." My mother shot me a glare. Yes, the White family knew it wasn't voluntary, but did they care? I smiled bitterly and continued, "If I had enough power and resources, then whatever I did would be seen as voluntary, because logically, I wouldn't need to follow anyone's orders." My mother furrowed her brow. "What are you getting at?" I said matter-of-factly. "If you and Dad sign an agreement giving me 5% of White Corporation shares, then when people see the footage, what will they think?" Ryan immediately jumped up, shouting, "Dream on. White Corporation is mine. It has nothing to do with you." My mother thought for a moment and finally grasped the idea. They'll think it's all fake, or that you're just doing this for attention. But then she narrowed her eyes suspiciously. "Joanna, are you trying to take Ryan's inheritance?" I replied, composed, "Of course not. Just add a clause that the agreement becomes void once I get married." She mulled over it, still unsure. I pushed further. "If the public outcry continues, the Smith family might cancel the engagement." In reality, the Smith family wouldn't cancel the engagement. Richard's reputation was already tarnished, and no reputable family would want their daughter to marry him. But my mother, frazzled by the crisis, grew even more anxious and immediately called my father. Amid the intense public pressure, the White family's stock value plummeted, and deals they were negotiating were abruptly canceled. My father was so anxious that cold sores appeared at the corners of his mouth, and my mother took her frustration out on me. "You little brat. Did you leak this? I knew you couldn't be trusted." I looked at her with a pitiful expression. "I didn't. Mom, only you and Dad have access to the surveillance footage. I can't get to it." She paused and I quickly added, "Besides, I'm your daughter. Why would I do something to damage our family's reputation? I regret running away from the engagement already. I would never do something so foolish again." She was half convinced, muttering, "Could the surveillance footage have been hacked?" Just then Ryan came home. He cursed at me and then checked the surveillance footage. It didn't take long for him to confirm that the system had indeed been compromised. My mother turned off the cameras and shoved me roughly. "Go online and clarify that you did all those things willingly. We didn't force you into any of this." I moved slowly. Mom, will clarifying even help? Without hard proof, everyone will just assume you forced me into it. She panicked, pacing frantically. Ryan suggested a few ideas, but they were laughable. Seeing their panic, I spoke calmly. Actually, I have an idea. Spit it out. The key issue right now is that I'm being treated like a servant and being forced to marry Richard. If we change the narrative to show that I did everything willingly and actually want to marry Richard, it might help. That's obvious. Of course, you know whether it's voluntary. My mother shot me a glare. Yes, the White family knew it wasn't voluntary, but did they care? I smiled bitterly and continued. If I had enough power and resources, then whatever I did would be seen as voluntary, because logically, I wouldn't need to follow anyone's orders. My mother furrowed her brow. What are you getting at? I said matter-of-factly. If you and Dad sign an agreement giving me 5% of White Corporation shares, then when people see the footage, what will they think? Ryan immediately jumped up, shouting, Dream on. White Corporation is mine. It has nothing to do with you. My mother thought for a moment and finally grasped the idea. They'll think it's all fake, or that you're just doing this for attention. But then she narrowed her eyes suspiciously. Joanna, are you trying to take Ryan's inheritance? I replied, composed. Of course not. Just add a clause that the agreement becomes void once I get married. She mulled over it, still unsure. I pushed further. If the public outcry continues, the Smith family might cancel the engagement. In reality, the Smith family wouldn't cancel the engagement. Richard's reputation was already tarnished, and no reputable family would want their daughter to marry him. But my mother, frazzled by the crisis, grew even more anxious and immediately called my father. Chapter 8. Signing the agreement. A few hours later, my parents made their final decision to sign the agreement. After all, the resources of the Smith family were invaluable. Signing a small, risky agreement now could yield double the rewards later. However, they still didn't fully trust me and demanded that I spend one night with Richard first, to make sure the deal was sealed. My father looked at me with a cold, appraising stare. Joanna, don't blame us for being harsh. Marrying Richard is good for everyone. I lowered my head obediently. I understand, Dad. That night, Richard was at a nightclub partying. After finding out his location, my father had a driver take me there. When I got out of the car, the driver reminded me, Miss, our people will be watching. You must find Mr. Smith. I sneered. Got it. They were afraid I might run away again. But the plan wasn't over. I wouldn't leave so easily. In the most luxurious VIP section, I found Richard, who was drinking and laughing with a beautiful woman. As soon as he saw me, he roughly pulled me to his side. Come on, Miss White, have a drink. He forced whiskey down my throat, making me choke. His friends leered and laughed. He held me tighter, boasting, My fiancée, the pure little bunny. Isn't she adorable? I suppressed my nausea and handed him a room key, whispering in his ear, I'll be waiting for you in the room. Richard froze, then his eyes lit up. I kissed his cheek and patted his chest with a suggestive smile before walking away. I went straight to the bathroom to vomit. Chapter 9. Unease. I hadn't even finished throwing up when someone pushed the door open and locked it behind them. Seeing who it was, my heart leaped with joy. I rushed into his arms. What are you doing here? Lucas instinctively caught me, his tone dark. Your plan is too risky. I couldn't sit back and watch. I too felt a little fearful, but his presence reassured me. I clutched his hand tightly, speaking seriously. Don't worry. I'll take care of myself and stay safe. Lucas's lips parted, but instead of speaking, he pulled me into a tight embrace. Time was short, and after exchanging a few brief words, we knew we had to part. Before leaving, he grabbed me again. His eyes, deep and filled with stars, glinted. Joanna, once you take this step, there's no turning back. I smiled softly. Of course. His gaze turned even more intense. Then I'll hold on to you and never let go. Summoning all my courage, I kissed him briefly on the lips. I wouldn't want it any other way. His passion ignited, and he pulled me close, swallowing the rest of my words in a fiery kiss. Chapter 10. Cold Smile. After our heated kiss, we went our separate ways. I went to the reserved suite, dimming the lights to create a soft, hazy atmosphere, waiting for Richard. He arrived shortly after. Why is it so dark? He grumbled and reached for the light switch. I quickly intercepted him. No, Richard, the bright lights make me shy. He laughed, satisfied with my bashfulness. I heard from your father that you're still a virgin. Is that true? Disgusting. Suppressing my revulsion, I picked up a glass of wine. Yes, I have no experience. Can you be gentle? Don't worry, I'll be very gentle. Richard, unsuspecting, downed the wine in one gulp. Things went smoother than I expected. Richard, a seasoned playboy, loved the thrill of conquest and couldn't wait to get started. Feigning shyness, I suggested he take a shower first. By the time he finished, the drug in the wine had taken effect, leaving him dazed with only one thought: to conquer the woman in bed. But the woman in bed had been swapped with someone I had hidden in the closet earlier. She wore the same nightgown as me and had a similar build and voice. In his drug state, Richard couldn't tell the difference. After it was over, the woman left with her payment. I looked at the sleeping Richard and finally let out a cold smile. Chapter 11: Disappearance. The next morning, Richard woke up to find me gone. Of course, I left him a handwritten note and a bloodstain on the sheets. Back home, my father called Richard to confirm everything before signing the agreement with a smile. My mother warned me, "Now that you have shares, remember, the agreement becomes void once you get married. Don't covet what's not yours." Yes, Mom. I obediently nodded and signed the share transfer agreement. With the agreement in hand, I immediately posted a clarification video online, as they had instructed. Only then did my parents relax, praising me for being a good daughter. Coincidentally, Richard asked to meet, giving me an excuse to leave home. Of course, I didn't go to see Richard. Instead, I went to Lucas's place. He frowned. "The negative comments about you online are increasing. Your clarification video had a big impact." It doesn't matter. After my past life's experiences, I no longer cared about public opinion. Besides, I planned to use this fire to burn even brighter. Now the real counterattack began. I started contacting various people, including journalists, company shareholders, gossip reporters, and White family's business partners. Time was tight, and I worked tirelessly collecting evidence and finding witnesses. Lucas could help gather data, but most of the work fell on me. In my past life, I was his burden. In this life, I wanted to stand by his side with my own strength. The White Corporation's financial situation was dire, but they had hidden it in their reports. In my past life, they survived thanks to the Smith family's investment after I married Richard. This time, I would expose them before they could act. After 3 sleepless days and nights, I was ready. I checked my phone and saw dozens of missed calls from the White family and Richard. Just then, my phone rang again. I answered to hear my mother's furious voice. "You little brat, where have you been? Richard has been looking for you for 3 days. Are you trying to run away again? I'll call the police if you don't show up." I smiled. "Mom, don't worry. You'll see me soon." Chapter 12: Press Conference. She did see me, but on the screen. I held a press conference, exposing the White Corporation's fraudulent financial reports. By the time the White family realized, I was already standing in front of the cameras, presenting the company's financial data. As a shareholder of White Corporation, I demanded transparency, calling for the release of accurate financial reports and bond records, and I publicly accused Chairman Dong White of embezzlement and false capital contributions. The stack of evidence I held nearly buried the White Corporation. The press conference caused a massive uproar, with reporters clamoring for answers. "Miss White, why are you publicly accusing your own family?" "Because the video released online was true," I answered calmly. "I suffered various abuses in the White family. Although I'm their daughter, I had none of the privileges of a wealthy heiress and was even sold to the Smith family for resources. Do such people deserve to be called my family?" Another reporter asked. "But you recently clarified that those were staged, and you own 5% of White Corporation's shares." I replied. "They forced me to clarify, and the 5% shares were their compensation." The reporter pressed on. "But if you bring down White Corporation, your shares will be worthless. Have you thought about that?" I smiled. "I don't care about White Corporation's money. I wanted the shares to have the legal right to question and challenge them." During the conversation, the hall doors burst open, and someone stormed in. It was my father. He was furious. "You ungrateful wretch." He tried to rush at me but was stopped by the reporters. Seeing this, he shouted, "You tricked and coerced us into signing the agreement. I declare it void." Under the flashing lights, I smiled gracefully. "Dad, once signed, the agreement is valid. Do you have evidence of coercion?" Indeed, fearing another hack, my mother had turned off the surveillance during our conversation. My father was speechless. After a while, he desperately said, "Don't forget, the agreement becomes void once you get married. What can you achieve in these few days?" I said clearly, "I can stay unmarried for life." He had nothing left to say. I raised the evidence in my hand. "Now, Chairman, please respond to my accusations." Chapter 13, Retribution. My father couldn't respond and had to face the charges of embezzlement and false capital contributions. The press conference ended with the police taking my father away, but the online discussion continued to rage. With the evidence I provided, the court quickly held a trial. My father was sentenced to 7 years in prison for false capital contributions and embezzlement, and his assets were confiscated. White Corporation's stock plummeted, and Lucas and I seized the opportunity to acquire a controlling stake, making him the largest shareholder. As Lucas's proxy, I took control of White Corporation and began my journey in the business world. One day, while I was busy, I received an unexpected call. It was Richard. His voice was oily and repulsive. "Joanna, how have you been?" I frowned. "What do you want?" He chuckled. "I miss you." That night, it was a bit hazy. "How about we meet again? Even though the White family has fallen, my feelings for you haven't changed. You're still my fiancé." I coldly replied, "The engagement is off. Don't contact me again." He shamelessly insisted, "How can that be? I'm your man. I have to take responsibility." His arrogance made me laugh. "Do you really think it was me that night? Let me tell you, it was a woman I hired. If you liked her, I can give you her contact, but I'm not interested in you." Richard was furious. "You tricked me. Mr. Smith, instead of throwing a tantrum, you should get a health check. Your promiscuity will catch up with you." I hung up. The woman I hired had HIV. Whether he contracted it was up to fate. In my past life, Richard's promiscuity infected me with diseases. This time I took preemptive action. He could deal with the consequences. Chapter 14, Karma. I gradually established myself at White Corporation, gaining the demeanor of a true leader. 6 months later, at a shareholders' meeting, I won by a significant margin and was elected the new chairman of White Corporation. Under my leadership, the company shed its old ways. The employees worked hard, united, and the company quickly turned around. In this life, I walked a completely different path. My family, however, paid the price for their greed and cruelty. My mother tried to visit me at the company several times but was turned away by security. One day after work, I saw her waiting outside. With my father's imprisonment, the family had exhausted their savings and were struggling. Seeing me, my mother put on a smile and approached. She looked haggard, her clothes worn, and her face bore a suspicious red mark. "Joanna, you've had a long day. Come home for dinner. Your brother misses you." I looked at her like a stranger. "Sorry, I have plans." She lowered her head, then hesitantly said, "Actually, I came to ask for your help. We're in a difficult situation." I cut her off coldly. "What does that have to do with me? You said the White family had nothing to do with me. Even if you're struggling, it has nothing to do with me, right?" She cried, "You're my daughter. When you forced me to marry Richard, I wasn't." I walked past her to a waiting car. Lucas got out and opened the passenger door for me. We didn't leave immediately but watched through the window. Soon, a burly figure approached and started beating my mother. "You're useless. Can't even get money." She cried and apologized. "I'm sorry. Ryan, give me another chance. I'll get the money from your sister." They left, her cries echoing in the night. Lucas asked, "Does it hurt?" I shook my head. "Not at all." Chapter 15, The Truth. In my past life, when I stood on the rooftop crying in despair, I had thought of jumping but held back. But then, Ryan White arrived after my call for help. He wasn't there to save me but to demand money. "Hurry up and give me money. As much as you have. 10,000, 8,000, whatever." If you don't have it, call your husband. I held back my tears, still concerned for him. Ryan, why do you need so much money? He was impatient. None of your business. Just give it to me. I took out my bank card, but as I handed it over, he said, just gambling. I'll win it back soon. You gamble. I immediately withdrew the card. Ryan panicked. Give it to me. When I refused, he lunged at me. He was tall and strong, easily snatching the card. Before leaving, he shoved me. You're so annoying. His push made me lose my balance and I fell from the rooftop. Ryan was terrified and ran home instead of gambling. My parents knew he had pushed me but chose to stay silent. They loved their only son so much that they would rather let their daughter die unjustly than expose his crime. So in this life, I wanted to see how my mother would continue to favor Ryan. I ignored their plight, only having my assistant update me on their situation. Ryan continued to gamble. My mother went to the casino to find him, only to be thrown out and injure her back. She was hospitalized for a day before being forced out due to lack of money. Her only son was nowhere to be found. The once noble Mrs. White was now reduced to begging for food. I focused on my work. Having changed my fate, I intended to enjoy it and cherish everything and everyone I had. A year later, I had accumulated enough capital. One day, Lucas picked me up from work and took me to a hotel. On the rooftop, balloons floated in the air, surrounded by candles, roses, and fireworks. Though cliché, it was still heartwarming. He wore a tuxedo, looking handsome as he approached with a large diamond ring. Joanna, will you give me a title? His usually cool voice carried a hint of pleading. Meeting his expectant gaze, I nodded. I no longer needed the 5% shares of White Corporation to secure my position. Lucas, overjoyed, hugged me, burying his face in my neck, his voice trembling. I thought you'd never marry. I kissed his ear. Lucas, you're worth more than that 5%. On the day we announced our engagement, Ryan White died. Addicted to gambling, he accumulated massive debts and had to flee. I called his creditors and told them his location. Ryan was caught at the docks, beaten to a pulp, and in a desperate move, jumped into the sea, drowning. He overestimated his abilities. After his death, my mother was devastated, crying for days. Then she thought of me. Knowing I wouldn't help, she sued me. I respected the court's decision. The court ruled that I had to pay her a monthly allowance of $2,000, but only after she turned 60. Until then, leaving the courthouse, I smiled at her. Until then, support yourself. Don't bother me. Her face cracked, tears streaming down her cheeks. Years later, I heard she disappeared. At that time, I was lying in Lucas's arms, eating grapes he fed me. He asked, should we look for her? Without hesitation, I shook my head. Those who never showed me true affection didn't deserve my pity.